you need to learn these core skills to be able to start a homestead. And I'm saying this as a beginner myself. So what are these core skills? Well, let's talk about it. Hi, I'm Katie, and if you've ever dreamed about buying a plot of land, building a home, and turning it into a homestead, then this channel is for you, so make sure you hit that subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate it, and let's jump in. So the first skill that I want to talk about is the skill of living on one income. And I feel like this skill is not talked about enough. I mean, it kind of is, but it's not. Really, when you think of homesteading, you think of gardening, or taking care of livestock, that traditional homesteading stuff, which is true. You do need those skills, but I would say living on one income is definitely going to be a big one, because if you cannot live on one income, then you will not be able to do homesteading full time. And sure, you can always do a side hustle. If anything, I would recommend, if you're going to be doing this, then developing some kind of alternative way of making money is great. But that takes time. That's definitely not an overnight process. So whether it's selling soaps or making bread and selling that, or even having one of those farm stands at the edge of your property, all good things, it takes time. So developing the skills of living on one income is definitely a skill set you need to be able to jump into the homesteading type of lifestyle. I would even say if you and your spouse are both working, that would be the time to prioritize saving money and paying off your debt. That is what my husband and I did, and that has helped us out so much on being able to live on one income. We paid off all of our debt early on in our marriage to be able to have the kind of lifestyle we do. So again, learning the skill and developing the skill of going down on one income, I would say, is the first step in starting your homestead. The next skill is learning how to garden. This is going to be a long learning curve, especially if you're like me, but if you have a green thumb, then it will be pretty easy for you to adapt. There's so much with gardening. I mean, it's not rocket science, but at the same time, there's so many things that you can mess up, or so many things that I didn't realize at the time that are important. It might be things like certain plants need more sun than other plants, and finding the space for it. And then there's companion planting, or whatever you call it, when two different plants don't do well planted next to each other, or some plants can be planted in buckets, but others do better in a garden bed. Or even just the soil quality, just learning how to create good soil and the nuances of how some plants prefer certain nutrients, like blueberries, acidic soil. All these little things are data pieces that you are going to need to gather and learn just through experience, and do so in your garden if you want an abundant harvest. And it takes time. So I guess I would recommend to start small. Start with produce that you know you are going to eat. Don't do what I did and you're just Brussels sprouts and this weird plant that I've never heard of before, but it sounds interesting. And this, start with something, that you're going to eat, that you would love a lot of, and focus on that and just slowly start adding to it. So for example, tomatoes. For me, I love tomatoes because there's just so much you can do with plum tomatoes, especially canning with different sauces. You can do sun-dried tomatoes. You could do salsa, barbecue sauce. The base of that is tomato paste. You could do tomato paste. Find your vegetable that you would feel comfortable with having a lot of stuff to make with, and then take it from there. The next core skill to starting a homestead is learning how to can and preserve food. This doesn't have to be expensive to start. If you do water bath canning, you could easily just have a stock pot with a rack on the bottom, because you can't have the glass jars touching right up against the metal. And then glass jars, rings band, and a water bath recipe. Easy to start with, not overly expensive. But then once you get into the pressure canning recipes, so that's for low acidic foods, you will need to have a special pot for that. It's a pressure canner. I will put a link below to my Presto canner. I love it. It's nice and big, so I can fit multiple layers in so many jars. That was why I got it, because my thought process was, if I'm going to be canning and spending time doing it, I want it to be worth it. I want to do as much as I can and have the room to do so. I also just want to make like a quick note here. Just because you're canning it doesn't mean that it's always going to be cheaper. So like, for example, last year, I ended up doing 2 different batches of tomato sauce. One was from the tomatoes from my garden, and then the other was tomatoes that I bought at like a local farm stand. So I got those tomatoes for a really good price. However, after doing the math, I realized that it was not cheaper to buy the tomatoes to make sauce. I would have been, better off just getting like a jar of sauce at BJ's. So for that, you will need to do the math if money is a factor as to why you're doing it. For me, that's one of the factors. Knowing the ingredients and the health of it is definitely one. And also simply depending on what it is, the aluminum like cans, to me, I think like that can't be good. That aluminum leaching into the food or whatever material the metal is. So the idea of having a glass jar is definitely a nice idea to me. And for those of you who are a little hesitant about canning because there is a lot of fear mongering, do your research. My biggest thing was botulism. I always say that wrong, but you get the point. And being nervous for that, and obviously not wanting to poison my family. But then once I did research and I saw how rare it is that like people actually die from that. Like I think between 1975 and 2009, there was only 109 deaths from it. And obviously those deaths are sad, but there's just so many other chances that you could die from something else. So to me, that was a pretty good feeling as to like, okay, like I think I'm good. Like I'm a pretty clean person. Like obviously, like don't be ignorant, sterilize when you need to sterilize the jars, or if something seems off, when in doubt, throw it out. But it's very rare. Don't like buy into the fear mongering of it all. The next core skill is bread making. This one is definitely a fun one, although I will say it's kind of like gardening, where it definitely has different nuances, and with time and experience, you'll kind of know what you're looking for. So bread making, yes, it's fun. I like it. I enjoy it. I would also say too, if you ultimately plan on milling your own wheat, then if you can't afford to buy the mill, then I would just jump right into that. From my research, bread making with store-bought flour versus fresh milled wheat is just 2 different animals, if you will. So I don't know, to me, it's like if your end goal is to start with fresh milled wheat, then just go for it. Don't spend time with store flour if that's not your end goal. I'd also recommend doing your research on the types of wheat berries that you need to buy. Learn from my mistakes. I was not doing this early on in my bread making journey. I thought you could just use whatever wheat berry that you wanted, but that is not the case. So like, for example, the hard wheat berries are better for breads and foods that require it to rise, in contrast to the soft wheat berries, which are better for dishes that don't have that rising part of it. So like cookies or like brownies, stuff like that definitely is better with the soft wheat berries. And it all has to do with the protein structure in the grain itself. Also, real quick, because I do get this question a lot where I buy my wheat berries, I get mine from Azure Standard. It's this great company. They support local farmers. They have a lot of organic goods, whether it's produce or like kitchen staples. So like I use them a lot for the wheat berries, or like I do oats occasionally if they have a fruit in season. That seems to be a really good price. I'll do that as well. Essentially, they are driving on the highway and they have a drop-off point. And so whenever you make your order, usually I find it's by the month. They'll send you emails when they're going to be in the area, or like the week that they're going to like be in that particular area for you, and you put your order together, and then they'll send you details of when, the date and time and location. So you do have to be available. That's the one downside. But for me, it's completely worth it because I can get these staples at a great price. And plus, I can buy a 50-pound bag and not feel bad about it. I don't even know where I'd get that at other places. So it's definitely something to look into if milling your own wheat is something that is a goal that you are trying to achieve. The next core skill you need to be able to start a homestead is to have that crafting DIY mentality. And there's so many different crafts or things that you can do, whether it's soap making, whether it's sewing, or fixing things around the house, flipping furniture, you name it. Like there's just so many different crafts or DIY projects that you can do. For me personally, I'm in the middle of a very big DIY project. My husband and I are building a house. And that in of itself, there's just so much that goes into it. If you're interested in learning more, I do have a video here. Essentially, we are building this house with the idea of a homestead in mind. So picking the layout of the land, if you will, where the house is going to go, that lends itself to having a good space for garden beds, or even little things like having a pot filler in the kitchen, which will be great for canning. I'm so excited for that. The last skill is raising livestock. Admittedly, I do not have livestock. This is a goal of mine, though. Where we are, it just doesn't make sense. But with the house build, we do plan on eventually getting ducks. I'd also like to get into beekeeping as well. So if you're not already subscribed and you would like to follow me along on that journey, hit that subscribe button. But having livestock, definitely like the other skill sets, it comes with that learning curve. And I actually am witnessing it with my family right now. They just bought chickens, or they bought chicks earlier this year. And it's kind of cool to see like the progression. They're learning how to take care of the chicks that are now closer to almost egg-laying chickens, and building the coop and all of that other good stuff that comes with having livestock. It's a learning curve, and it's a skill that you will need to be able to have a productive homestead. But that is all I have for you today. If you have anything else that you would like to add to this list of skills, drop it in the comments. I would love to hear it. But until next time, I will see you then. Bye.